Do you feel like you just keep getting worse and that your health symptoms just keep you keep being bombarded with more and more and more of them despite your best efforts? And at this point, you've already seen all of the specialists. You've already seen all the naturopaths. You've already tried the functional medicine practitioner. You've already seen 5, 10, 15 different health coaches. Like, you've already tried all the things and you just keep getting worse. If that's you, you are so in the right place. And quite frankly, it doesn't matter what you're struggling with. It doesn't matter if you're struggling with something super severe like POTS, chronic inflammatory response syndrome, or CIRS, or an autoimmune condition like Hashimoto's. I know this is the boat I'm in. An autoimmune condition like multiple sclerosis or Parkinson's or rheumatoid, or let's say you don't have any of those yet, but you have a high ANA, or you have a high rheumatoid factor, or something's off on your blood work that's pointing in the direction of you likely developing or being on the path to develop some sort of disease. Maybe your symptoms are fatigue during the week. Like, by the time we get to Thursday and Friday, it's all you can do to make it through the day. Maybe it's headache on top of the fatigue. Whatever it is, you're in the right place. So, what we're talking about today is spinal flow, and this in the context of nervous system regulation and being something that can actually help support nervous system regulation, and why I have come to believe that this is the path to wellness, regardless of what you're struggling with. So, quick, quick insight into my how I arrived at this conclusion, because this was hard one. I've struggled for years with chronic health stuff of all sorts, and it really hit, it really amped up to like 1,000 back in 2020, gosh, 2021 now, when I stopped hormonal birth control. And I had a full-blown case of something that I didn't believe existed until then, which is post-pill syndrome. And it was overnight. I was dealing with chronic UTI symptoms, migraine, fatigue. I had period problems. And then all of this was on top of Hashimoto's, which I was already with the Hashimoto's. So this is autoimmune low thyroid. I was already experiencing inflammation in my body and just generally not feeling well. And so fast forward 18 months, and I resolved a lot. I'd made so much progress. I'd resolved lots of these really frustrating and troubling symptoms, most notably the chronic UTI. And I'd done it on my own through tons of head down, poured into the research, ignoring Western medicine, which quite frankly offered no help, um, and got relief on my own by addressing the metabolic dysregulation caused by long-term use of oral contraceptives and then quitting them cold turkey. So it's kind of the only steroid we're on that we're not titrated off of. Because if you think like if you've ever been prescribed uh, corticosteroids of any sort, there's always a titrating off period. And with hormonal birth control, we're just told, oh yeah, go cold turkey, it'll be just fine. Yeah, no, it won't. So I know lots of other women who have struggled with this too and taken a while to get their health back on track. Now, even though I'd done all of that by once again putting my head down into the research, figuring out this metabolic dysregulation and tackling this really from an intellectual view, I was still struggling with so many symptoms. I was still struggling with the headaches, like frequent headaches, still just not feeling well in my own body. And then I also had other symptoms pop up. For the first time ever, I was experiencing tinnitus, which was driving me mad. And this is like ringing in the ear. And for a really, really, really long time now, I've had a very crunchy neck. And it was getting worse. It was like, turn my neck and it sounds like somebody's popping the bubble wrap. So all of this was still going on, and I just still was not feeling really well. And a friend of mine told me about spinal flow. And so I was like, all right, I'm game. Let's give it a try. So I did. And from the very first session, I knew this was something different. So I'm here today. We're talking about two modalities that share, there's a lot of overlap between these two. One is network spinal analysis. This was developed back during the 80s by Dr. Donnie Epstein. And the second of those is spinal flow. This was developed sometime in the 2000s by Dr. Carly Axford. Now, both of these share the same underlying theory. They have slight differences in how they the uh, the see the relief from these two. Today, we're going to talk about the overarching theory, which is nervous system regulation. So, with both of these, the spine is viewed. Basically the brain in the spinal column is viewed as the most important organ within the body. And the spinal column itself is viewed as an extension of the brain. It's literally thought of as the back of the mind. And with both of these modalities, so when we think about the vertebra, and these are all joints stacked on top of each other, there's space between these joints for nerve basically for a nerve to travel. And every single one of these nerves supply different tissues and different organs within the body. Now, the circulation through the nerves looks different than it does through the bloodstream. So, through the bloodstream, we of course have blood moving, right? Like circulation of blood. With the nerves, we have circulation as well. It is circulation of energy, nerve impulses. So, this is actually energy. Now, when we think in terms of energetics, and this is like, think of terms of electricity. Electricity is impeded by matter. Okay, hang with me here. So, what this means is anytime there is compression in this space, all of a sudden we've got more resistance in the area. And so there is less space, if you will, for that electrical signal to travel. What it's actually doing is creating resistance for that electrical signal. So what it means is the electrical signal can't travel as far, as fast, as intensely as it needs to. And if we see our body as both matter and energy, so we are this combination of matter and energy. We are not one or the other. We are a combination of matter and energy. We need energy as much as we need matter for life. Okay. So this is literally energy, the energy of life that is moving through these nerves. And it is needed in every tissue, in every organ, in every cell of the body to receive these nerve impulses in order to not just survive, but actually thrive and be well, which is the natural state of your body. You were made for wellness, you were not made to be sick. And so, once again, whenever this space between vertebra is shortened, this is creating electrical resistance for the nerve impulse and making it harder for that impulse to reach all of the cells for the tissue and organs that it supplies. And we have multiple nerves. We have nerves exiting through every single one of our vertebral spaces along our spine. And so now all of a sudden we start to see, oh, I have a problem with my thyroid. Huh, there's actually like something going on with the vertebra in my neck. Now, this is where spinal flow and network spinal differ just a little bit. So I'm going to introduce the concept from spinal flow. Spinal flow sees, so once again, if we think of the spinal column as the back of the mind, spinal flow sees, uh, first of all, any kind of compression between the vertebra would be a physical blockage. However, we also store emotional stress and we also store chemical stress in the back of the mind, so along the spine. So when we eat something that we can't fully digest properly, the body stores that excess in the spine along the spinal column. And where as it starts to build up, what you have is around the spine itself, you start to have these areas where you've got chemical toxins stored. So those are further restricting that flow of electrical impulse from the nerve to, in this case, like I say, we're going to use the thyroid as an example, to the thyroid. And likewise, emotional. So anytime we have emotional stress and we don't allow ourselves the space to deal with that real time, or it's too intense, quite frankly, to deal with real time, then that the extra of it gets stored once again in the back of the mind. And like where it is tends to correlate with what symptoms you're experiencing. So once again, like using the thyroid as an example, it would get stored in the lower vertebra of the neck. And then what happens over time, we have these layers and layers and layers of chemical, physical, and emotional stress build up. And eventually that is going to restrict the nerve impulse to the tissue, to the organ for so long that we wind up in a disease state. We wind up being able to be clinically diagnosed with a disease. Now, before it reaches that point, we are able to, and even after it reaches that point, we're able to use spinal flow or a similar modality like spinal network spinal analysis in order to start removing some of those blockages. And here, when I say this, scientifically speaking, what we are doing is increasing the flow of from spinal flow standpoint, increasing the flow of cerebrospinal fluid. Well, actually, from both, it doesn't matter which modality we're talking about. Increasing the flow of cerebrospinal fluid throughout the spine. What this does is actually helps to start moving some of those toxins out of the spine back into the lymphatic system where CSF fluid drains, and then from the lymph system, the body can get rid of it. Network spinal also sees when we have these areas where we've been storing all of these stressors for so long, we actually have to use a lot more energy. The muscles need a lot more energy in order to correct that and hold us upright. And so network spinal sees it as these areas of stored emotion, of stored toxins begin to dissolve, then the muscles can hold us upright much easier, releasing that extra energy that had been used to hold us upright so that it can be available for the body for healing. So that's like a key difference between the two modalities. One of the other key differences between the two modalities is the touch points. Let's see. So what is so interesting about spinal flow is there are a variety of assessments that can be done to basically look at the full length of your spine. And it's so interesting because based on the results of these assessments, we as spinal flow practitioners can actually pinpoint areas of the body where you are experiencing symptoms. So this is something where it seems like we're reading your mind because we're able to determine once again through these assessments. And what do these assessments look like? Well, I mean, one of them is tuck your chin to your chest. One of them is like bring your right ear down to your right shoulder, or bring your left ear down to your left shoulder. And we're looking for your ability to do that. We're looking for any kind of restriction. We're looking for any kind of rotation. And we do this for each part of the spine. So there are different ones like for the For the thoracic area, there are different ones for your lumbar spine. There are different ones like for even for your sacral region. And through these assessments, then we use that in conjunction with palpations. We gently feel along the spine and then are able to use that information to say, okay, this is what I'm feeling in your system. I can tell you've got sciatica. And somebody's like, holy cow, how did you know that? And it's just because it becomes apparent as we're doing these assessments. Um, Now, how does spinal flow actually work to increase this flow of cerebrospinal fluid? Well, both network spinal and spinal flow use access points along the spine. And what we are doing is actually at these points, we are able to access the dura mater. We're able to access, so this is the sheath that covers, that surrounds the brain and actually surrounds um, the spinal column itself. And I don't mean the vertebra, I mean the nerves that are running within the spinal column. So we are able to access the dura mater. And this is basically communicating directly with your nervous system to help it leave that stressed state and drop into the rest and digest state. And when that happens, we open up the body's natural, um, we open up the body's natural ability to heal. It's almost like we're awakening the innate healer. And this is where, yeah, it may sound a little woo. Woo or not, this works. So once again, I have been getting network spinal flow for a while now. And this has helped me in ways that nothing else has. And I have tried a huge variety of alternative healing modalities. I've tried Reiki, I've tried myofascial therapy, I have tried sound therapy and acupuncture, and the list just keeps going on and on and on. And nothing has ever worked like this works. So full stop. I cannot see my life like, for me, it is a non-negotiable of having spinal flow or NSA, one or the other of these two weekly. Now, the difference between the two primarily is in the access points. Once again, uh, there is definitely some nuance difference in the theory behind both of them, and there is difference in the assessments for each of them. Network spinal analysis practitioners are chiropractors. You have to be a chiropractor to become a certified NSA practitioner. Spinal flow, you do not need that prerequisite. And so that is why that is the path I chose. I am not a chiropractor, therefore I chose to become a spinal flow practitioner. So, oh, and then in terms of like, hmm, where was I going with this? I had a thought and it left me. Oh, so how do you set yourself up, or how do you experience spinal flow? Like, let's say you're open to this because you're like, all right, I'm ready to throw in the towel because I mean, seriously, nothing else has worked and things aren't getting better. And I mean, something's got to give here. Great question. Use that link below, set up a time for a free assessment with me. So I serve the North County, San Diego area, primarily in Oceanside and Encinitas are the two locations I'm back and forth between. If you are not in this area and like you're not willing to travel to this area, reach out to me at hey@theflowtoheal.com. I will help you find a spinal flow practitioner or NSA practitioner in your area. Be sure to share this link with this video with a friend who may be in need of this and subscribe to this channel. All right, until next time, bye.